Our span of control effectively goes from Maine to the Caribbean, as far west as Hawaii. We have properties in Western Europe. We're the largest independent operator of hotels in central London. We have roughly 18,000 associates in North America. I am humbly the leader of that organization, and it's not due to me, it's due to the 18,000 associates who get up every day, believe in the message, do the work, service the guests. We provide the tools for them to do their jobs, but I think the most important thing that we do is we hold people accountable, so that we try to build a very cohesive team, so that all of those who are working hard, they're working hard together, pulling the oar in the same direction. And you know, we've been in business for 25 years, and I'm very fortunate because I genuinely enjoy what I do every day. So thank you for having me.
Wow. Tough acts to follow. Good morning, everybody. Some of y'all may have had some of Ron's Pronghorn spirits last night, which is why you're a little quiet, maybe a little sleepy, but I'm Paul Cash. I'm the proud general counsel of Wyndham Hotels and Resorts for the last 20 years. Started when I was in kindergarten. And I am also the executive sponsor of our Spectrum Employee Resource Group for African American and Black team members, which is a cause extremely important to me, as I'm lucky and blessed to have 3 beautiful and capable nephews in my life who happen to be African American, and they are my why. Wyndham, in case you didn't know, we are the world's largest hotel franchisor by number of franchise properties, over 8,300 hotels, 100 countries, 25 brands. You may think of us as, you know, the economy folks, Super 8, Days Inn. We're all of that. But over half of our portfolio is actually mid-scale plus. So we have everything from the beautiful Travel Lodge that's a 4.5 star down in Florida City to a 5-star luxury registry collection hotel just opened, Hodges Bay in Antigua. Beautiful product, so all ends of the spectrum. But what I would say, further to Ron's good comments, why we're all here, our industry is at its best when everybody has a seat at the table, period. And that's why we're all here. And we're all in the business of fostering travel, because I think Mark Twain said it best: travel eliminates and fights prejudice, narrow-mindedness, and bigotry. And so that's what we're all here in this great industry that gets people out, gets people learning new cultures and new walks of life. And so I'm just really honored to be part of the panel and part of it.
Wonderful. Charles.
Yeah, you talk about tough acts. I mean, these guys, wow. So I'm the CEO of Aperture Hotels, Charles Oswald. And over the years, I've managed about 300 hotels and bought and sold a couple of companies. And leading up to this group right now, we launched Aperture Hotels 2.5 years ago. We're up to about 30 properties as we sit here today. We own 8 of them through our affiliate, and the rest are third-party managed. That third-party managed portfolio is focused on compact full-service, lifestyle, and premium select service property brands, as well as a few independent properties as well. Our footprint ranges from Florida beaches to coastal California, and as far north in New York and Wisconsin. So we're pretty location agnostic. In terms of, that's it in terms of the type of properties that we manage. And, we see our mission out there to really make a meaningful difference in the industry as well as in the life of our team members and our guests. And that's why we're here today.
Wonderful. So how would you describe the current state of the U.S. hospitality industry right now from your company's perspective? What are you feeling optimistic about, and what's keeping you up at night? And let's start with you, Charles.
Sure. In terms of, so what are we optimistic about? Well, first off, I would say that a lot of the wage challenges that we had over the last few years have somewhat normalized. There's the threat of deportation and that kind of thing may change things in the upcoming future. But as we stand here today, things are in a much better situation. Productivity is up, turnover is down. That's a better situation. I think interest rates are probably peaked, not likely to go up, more likely to go down in the future. So that's good. We've seen our property insurance rates coming down. So that was also good. I think that's peaked and what the situation was. In terms of what keeps me up at night, well, there is still the issue that the last 4 consecutive months in the industry, we've seen declining occupancies across the country. So RevPAR is pressured, and when you take what those cost structures have been and CPI outpacing ADR growth, I think that we'll continue to see some pressure on GOP, profit per available room, or EBITDA erosion as we press forward for the next year or two. So that's a point that we need to turn around.
Great. Paul, how about you? I know Wyndham's earnings reports just came out this morning, and you were on that call before joining us on stage here. Kind of talk a little bit about the positive things you're seeing and what's keeping you up at night.
Yeah, we had a great quarter, literally just came off the earnings call a few minutes ago, and sure, there's some softness in RevPAR, but that's transitory. Would encourage you all, first-time established hoteliers, to have a broader horizon, not just get lost in today's news. If you look longer term, the future is extremely, extremely bright for travel and for hospitality. We, our deep summer months are still ahead of us. And there's a lot of hope and optimism that all the uncertainty, geopolitical, macroeconomic, is going to subside, whether it's, some positive news this morning around Europe and Japan, maybe around tariffs. Maybe that starts to fade into the distance. Maybe interest rates do come down at some point soon, and inflation ebbs. We all think that that's going to happen. And the reality is, if you look at this younger demographic, your Gen Y, X, Ys, and Zs, they want to travel. They are not going to sacrifice travel. They are looking for experiences. That demand is there and is not going away. But don't take our word for it. We just did a survey, multi-month, 300 owners approximately across the US and the Caribbean. And what did the owners tell us? Hotel owners, just like all of you. Over 90% said they believe in the resiliency of the industry and are optimistic about the next 5 years. And 4 out of 5 said, listen, while, yes, there is some economic uncertainty right now, 4 out of 5 said, I'm going to expand my portfolio in the next 5 years. So people have a long-term horizon, so we're very optimistic in that medium-term horizon.
Great. Warren, what about you? Are you optimistic in that near term, the next 5 years?
I'm always been optimistic. And we're in this period of uncertainty, as my colleague here mentioned, and quite frankly, uncertainty is the least effective we've had in the past. Some of the worst have been, the financial recession. Other really bad things that have happened have been oversupply. That's not going to be an issue. So this uncertainty, if you think about it, first quarter of this year was actually good. Second quarter, disaster. Third quarter, not sure. Fourth quarter actually looks pretty good. And when I think about things that have happened in Washington, which has created all of the uncertainty, at least now we're starting to get to the point where some decisions are being made. Doesn't matter whether I like them or not, or we like them. Remember, elections have consequences. Year and a half, we're gonna be able to vote again. So vote. You don't like what's going on? Get out and vote. Don't whine about it. Go vote. So I actually believe we're in a really good spot. If you look at the data about the economy is actually doing well. And so, there is no reason not to be bullish. In my opinion, there's no reason not to be bullish about the travel industry.
Great. Ron, what are you excited about?
One, I'm excited to be in this room because I see a whole lot of opportunity for partnerships, for creating value, and for, as a community, of people in this room and outside of this room really, truly building a bigger table for everyone to succeed. The reality is that consumers want experiences. You've heard it multiple times just in the last 5 minutes. You've probably heard it over the course of the last day, and you'll continue to hear that. And consumers are proving, and I would say definitely people of color, black and brown communities are proving that their dollars want to be spent with brands and people who can connect with their travel. $145 billion annually is spent within that community traveling. When you think about the value that you could provide if you're connecting with consumers, doesn't matter where they're from, doesn't matter what culture they're from, are you giving them cultural experiences that allow them to feel safe and allow them to have a higher level of trust with each and every one of you that drives that type of loyalty. Within that, we believe that spirits play in the area of experiences. So many people are undereducated about the best way to create a great beverage when you are entertaining at home. They're open to new experiences of learning. Think about the travel and the amount of going to the Bourbon Trail. And whether that's mocktails or that's traditional things, there are opportunities to serve the consumer differently. And on top of that, to be able to represent today, we've invested in 39 different businesses of diverse ownership. We're going to invest in more. We're growing at 11%. Our top brands are growing over 30%. And each and every consumer and each and every one of you, I know for a fact, you've said, I want to support a local business. I'm in a new city. Tell me about different things. This is an opportunity for us to create a bigger table, create wealth, create dollars, and all of the challenges that everyone here has been talking about are just opportunities waiting to be solved. And if you can do it authentically, you can beat your competition.
Great. So going back a little bit more towards development of hotels. So where is there opportunity, do you all feel, in the market for first-time or established hoteliers? What type of development projects are you seeing the most traction right now? And I will just reference the Lodging Econometrics just released this morning their hotel construction pipeline report. And it was showing 3% year-over-year growth, which I think is pretty nice. And I know Wyndham today reported record pipeline growth as well. Yeah. So where are we seeing that growth right now? Let's start with you, Warren.
I'm probably the wrong person to ask about development. I can't stand putting a shovel in the ground. I've done it way too many times. And sometimes it works fabulously well, and other times it's a complete and utter disaster. So I would say to you that for those of you who want to do it, scratch the itch, get it over with. And I think about development a couple ways. Number one is I'm putting a shovel in the ground. I have no idea what's in the ground. Number two, we actually built a hotel and we struck oil, not the kind of oil you make money on. It was an environmental problem. Three, you actually have to change the travel patterns of the people who are already going into that marketplace. Okay. This doesn't. We've had very successful developments. I'm being a little bit facetious. But in my mind, it's so much easier to just buy a hotel, fix it, and make it better. That's what I like to do, because as an old salt, I've learned my lessons about development. Now, with that said, there's nothing better than getting financing and signing on guarantees and having fun building something and, you know, fighting with your general contractor, and when it opens, it's actually really special. It's special in that you actually created something that wasn't there. It was sort of, you know, you had a vision of something and you created it, and when it works, man, it's really, really special. So I have to be honest, I'm not really looking at development opportunities right now. I couldn't even begin to tell you what markets to go to, but, you know, in your own local market, if you think there's an opportunity, go investigate it.
Great. Paul, what about you? I know you referenced that owner's report earlier. What were some of the results of what were owners saying about development in there?
Could I just piggyback off of Warren's answer just for a second to give another perspective? So yes, you referenced our pipeline, which we just announced, 255,000 rooms in our pipeline. Over 76% is new construction, and over 35% of that, Warren, has actually broken ground. So shovels in the ground. So new construction can get done even in this difficult environment where there may be slightly higher costs, interest rates are where they are. But I completely agree with Warren that if I was a first-time hotelier, and we want to see everybody in this room being successful, I would go conversion all day long. Buy an existing box. Ideally, our recommendation for where you would want to start is in the select service space. Full service, big boxes with F&B and lots of employees are just complex. You want to go with a conversion, less financial pressure, smaller box. I think cash flow is sexy. I don't know about y'all, but select service, so economy and mid-scale hotels, they produce a ton of cash flow. The margins are very high. You need maybe 15 to 20 employees to run a Days Inn or a Super 8 or a La Quinta. Those are the kinds of boxes that I think a first-time hotelier does before maybe your second or third, you're swinging for the fences like Warren with a big new construction. So I would say in those spaces, and to Warren's good point, you got to think about your demand drivers. Don't go in thinking that you're going to create the demand. Infrastructure. There's a ton of money around bridges, airports, transportation projects, data centers. AI is producing massive data centers. All of those projects need hotels, need extended stay lodging. You know, think about those kinds of demand drivers, and that's where I would go.
Okay. Charles, what about you?
You know, you framed it up a couple of different ways. You know, you mentioned what's getting done and what would you do, you know, as a first timer, what would you do as experienced developer, and I think that those are two different things. So definitely to Paul's point, a lot of what's getting done is at the extended stay and an economy mid-scale level. They are easier to execute. There is less risk in that project execution if you're coming out of the ground with something that's new. We just opened most recently, or we're about to open, I'm sorry, in 2 weeks, you know, a Town Place Suites that's on the beach down in Destin. And you know, that would be a good example of maybe an extended stay type project that you can get your arms around and is easier to pull off. The next thing is probably the brand conversion opportunity and what we were talking about. If you can take an existing box, reposition that and reopen it, a number of what we have in our pipeline that we're working on with some you know, investors is, you know, Tribute, there's Tapestry, you know, and that sort of thing that's leaning into some lifestyle opportunities. And then also, I mean, one of the deals we just signed with Wyndham is a, you know, a 400+ room box. It's more complicated, but it's reopening an existing box, a convention hotel that has, you know, it's full service box with 100,000 square feet, again, with more experienced developers who have been down the road and understand how to do that, right? So the right partnership, you know, you can pull that type of box off. In terms of where the opportunity is, that's another thing is we have a couple of adaptive reuse of office space. So when you look at commercial real estate, of the segments in commercial real estate, hotels stand out actually delivering better cash flow in returns to their investors versus other commercial real estate investments. So if you want to be in CRE, if you're holding offices right now, you're saying, what the heck can I do? What's the next highest and best use of that space? And we have some folks who are saying, you know, historic like bank building or a historic office building and saying, let's flip that over to hotel use. And man, they're in A locations, A+ locations in city centers that are fantastic, where we can, you know, leverage the convention business base, the business travel base that's there in a better box.
Absolutely.
Esther, could I just add
Yeah,
on quickly that you referenced our owner survey. What all of these owners across the U.S. and Caribbean told us, We asked, what segments are you looking at? Are you looking at independent or branded? Over 98% said they were looking at branded offerings. Why is that? In a difficult geopolitical and macroeconomic situation, they want a partner. They want to leverage the support of a brand, the partnership of a brand, particularly in difficult times. And that's split about half of them interested in hard brands, half in soft brands. If you don't know what soft brands are, they're much more flexible, allow you to still have your boutique identity for your box. And then when you look at which chain scale, is about a third lifestyle boutique, third mid-scale, and a third economy. We're interested in those spaces. 96% interested in extended stay. That is the hottest market trend, bar none, because there's a lack of housing. Airbnb and all this is taking away housing. There's just not enough. And there are all these logistics and transportation workers that need a place to stay. And I think, I don't know if you would agree, Warren, it's got one of the best margins in the business. Like an Echo Suites economy extended stay, you need like 7 to 8 FTEs. 7 to 8 to run this 124 room box. Really, really strong margins. So those are the kinds of things that we're seeing people interested in.
Hotels that he just mentioned, they vomit cash. Okay?
Can I put that in one of our marketing?
Yes. And so when you think about what you're building, and they're probably stick construction,
There's an emoji.
the cost to build those things are probably, it just varies from the type of hotel you build. But think about it. I mean, he's right. Cash flow is everything. So if you're going to build a hotel, think about what you're. It's always great to have this. Yeah, I'm going to build this really cool, sexy rooftop bar, pool. I don't know. Figure out how to build a hotel that makes money. Okay.
Yeah, if you have $1 million, it's easy to go out there and do one of these, right, and invest and get started. I think of that extended stay. So if you have $100 million and you're one of the bigger funds, you have a hard time with it sometimes because doing that in scale, it's a lot of transactions to get done. And so it kind of depends upon where you are, right, in your situation. And I think for a lot of folks in this room, that makes a lot of sense.
If you are going to have a rooftop bar, you need a supplier.
Yes, you do.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah.
No, in all seriousness, while I'm not building and developing hotels and spaces, I will say this, access to capital is tough. So being smart about the capital you use and getting the best returns on that capital is critically important. And I've always been of the mindset of it always costs you more to get a new consumer than a current one. It always costs you more to build a new building than to renovate a current one. And I would just say, similar to, from a cash perspective, the right restaurants, the right food and beverage programs, speakeasies are growing, little environments that allow you to have small amount of employees, but if they're really good, can take someone on an experience, and the profit and the cash flow that comes out of those types of businesses, especially from a beverage perspective, is just another way to increase your bottom line where you're at today, because many hotels, regardless of brand, and I don't have all the rules on franchising and everything else, I don't eat at most of the hotels that I stay at, because I go and figure out where to go to have a great experience. Imagine if you could flip that at the number of locations that are represented in this room. That is just pure organic growth and loyalty all at the same time.
Ron, you were talking about experiences. Just a funny notional example to relate to. So we're working on a project to where it would take what used to be an apartment building and convert it into a hotel, right? So back into, it seems like a simple, and it's beachfront property. But it turned out that the local licensing, it was just impossible to get a proper liquor license.
Yeah.
And we're talking to our brand partners there for a soft brand lifestyle, upper upscale product. And the guy looked at me, John, he might be in this room. He's like, how do you create an experience without alcohol? And I found myself in I was trying to answer that question, but yeah, it's kind of a funny question, right? And so much of the experience now revolves around the bar in today's hotel lifestyle experience properties.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. So that kind of leads me to the next question is, there's been the trend of small brands connecting with consumers in the spirits industry and the hotel industry, as we've just learned. So what are you seeing these days in that realm, and how are companies capitalizing on that? Ron, let's start with you.
Storytelling. The reason why I always try to look at myself as a consumer, but also do a lot of consumer research, and each of us should also internalize some of our own consumer trends, but stories are everything. We just launched a brand called Edmund's Honor. Edmund's Honor is a Madagascan vanilla bourbon. It is driven through a story of a young boy named Edmund Albius. Edmund Albius was working on literally an island off the coast of Madagascar called Bourbon. It's now called Reunion. He actually developed the process for how to pollinate the vanilla bean, the vanilla orchid, to extract vanilla. Now, if you look in the history of vanilla, vanilla was one of the most premium spices in the world. In the world. And this young boy, no one's ever known about. So we built a brand called Edmund's Honor, in honor of Edmund Albius. We host Honor Hour happy hours in the markets that we're at. The brand is growing great. It's a great taste. It's a great flavor. It's a great story. And when people hear it, they go, I want to try that because of the story. So what's your story? Whether you're a big brand or whether you're a small brand, what is the local or authentic or national story that allows you to connect with consumers? There's a brand that I started going to that I think they just changed their name to Postcard Cabins. It's like these little small, I think Marriott might have purchased them or something along those lines. But for like 2 or 3 years, all I did was talk to people about my wife and I going and having a fire in this little box room and this window in it, looking out at the ocean, whatever. Like, and you're like, oh, I want to be a part of that. It's a story. And so I just think all of us, we have to be brand ambassadors. We have to really believe in our brands, curate our brands, but more importantly, find the authentic connection and be really, really sharp on the audience that you know that's going to resonate with. And go deep, don't go as wide, but go deep as you can. And from there, you can grow and you can become more relevant.
Charles, do you have any experience with doing that at any of your properties?
Yes, and look, what he said, without sounding too redundant, I mean, Ron's right on point. Look, experience is where it's at, and the bottom line is, you know, you might have a hotel that that by its box alone is worth $150 a night, you know, to the consumer. You create that experience, that emotional connection with people. You have the story in the background, and something. When you tie all that together, all of a sudden it's worth, you know, it's worth $30, $40, $50 more a night, right? And so you can monetize on that experience by creating that connection. Very important point.
Great. Paul, do you have anything to add to that?
It leads my head to thinking about our soft brands that really allow the owner to tell their story, because you're spot on about the importance of story. But soft brands like Trademark Collection and Registry Collection really allow you to preserve the identity and of your boutique, of your small hotel, and give it that local feel, like the Cantilever Hotel Trademark Collection in Rainier, Minnesota, that has a beautiful distillery and a gorgeous hotel side by side with a great local story around this beautiful fishing village. Like the Grand Palladium resorts all across the Caribbean, including in Jamaica. They're part of our registry collection, but it has a very, very local feel to it. There are countless other stories. SBE, what I'm thinking right now. Project HQ, we launched with Sam Nazarian and Mark Antony, a brand, the Latin singer, my wife's favorite, as an aside. A gorgeous 5-star upscale product, but it is all about being the hub of a city. It is the HQ of a town with great FF&E, great experiences, you know, like med spa kind of amenities, and it is a hyper local and upscale. And we were able to say, we'll add our soft brand registry collection, so we'll give you all the marketing and distribution support, and you make these boxes yours that speak to the culture, that speak to your local community. and tell your story.
Great. Warren, do you have any experiences to share?
Well, what I would add without sort of repeating what my colleagues have said is that all of those experiences, all of the storytelling, all of the things that really get people want to come back or try a specific product are driven by the associates in those specific properties. And so when you allow your associates, you give them the bandwidth, you empower them to tell their story. And they may not tell a story exactly the same way that you do, but if they're enthusiastic about it and they're willing to engage with the customer, that's how you win. Because when you think about our business, unless you're at a resort property, most of the time, the customers, the guests, they're not coming to the hotel. They're coming there to stay, but they have a different purpose for their trip. If you can engage them, one of the things that drives me crazy when I go to one of the hotels that we operate and I see people walking out the door for dinner time, I'm going, where are they going to spend their money and why aren't they spending it here? It drives me crazy. Now, you're not going to get them to have dinner every night at your hotel. My point is that if you empower your associates, you give them the tools, you give them the stories to tell so that they can do it in their own way, you win.
Yeah. And just to build on that, as a consumer, and I like nice hotels, but more importantly, I love great service. And when I click down on that, I actually love a great concierge. But a concierge doesn't have to be a concierge. It could be the person at the front desk. That when you do go and say, hey, what are some restaurants around here? They help you actually solve your challenge, right? When you say, what's the local coffee shop? What's the local running path? What's the, and you can answer that appropriately. I may not eat there, but you know what? When I come back to that location, I'm coming back to the place that created value for me beyond the bed that I'm sleeping in or how large the room is. It's the service you provide. And that's another way to create a story. It may not be a brand story, but it becomes a brand story because it's something that consumers end up remembering. And memories are stories as well.
Well, that leads, go ahead, Charles.
Can I do, would it be okay to just take a quick poll for a second? Just to ask.
Absolutely.
So in this, first I want to make sure you're paying attention. Could everybody raise their left hand for a second? Everybody, just put that left hand up and, okay, all right, cool, so everybody's saying, all right, so back down. So how many people, when you were booking your flight, or when you book a flight, like to this conference, is price a factor? Like, did you look at the pricing of the different seats you could have gotten? You said, okay, I'm just getting a seat,
Sure,
right,
absolutely.
from point A to point B,
right.
and you said, man, the price is kind of the main thing. The big factor is that it's just a commodity, right? When you buy a seat on an airline, for the most part, it's just getting you from here to there. There's not a whole lot of difference in the legroom. There's not a whole lot of difference in the product. Not a whole lot of difference in the service and whatever. And this is what makes our part of the travel experience, I think, a little bit more special, because there is product differentiation and there's experience differentiation. Yeah. And people will pay up for it and not look at, so we can't just be a commodity, really. That's the bottom line. You have to be more than that.
Yeah.
Amen.
And then going back to everything that we just discussed, it's so important to have great staff at your properties. So what are some things that your companies are doing to attract that great staff and then empower them to do what they do best? So whoever wants to start.
So one of the things that we do, because we're helping employ the spirits industry, but the spirits industry is just part of the hospitality industry. So we have two major programs. We have something called Spirits Prep. It's an 8-week program. We put 75 people through it last year, which was learning about the spirits industry, but more importantly, all of the industries that are spirits adjacent or within it. And then what we do is we help those people in development and everything else to hopefully find employment with people in this room and with some of the brands. We want to employ what we would call the 3-tier system, which is a supplier, a wholesaler, and or retail slash hotel slash hospitality, each of those areas is an opportunity for us to help someone get their start. And if you talk to so many of the executives that in many of our spirits brands that many of you consume on a regular basis, many of them started as bartenders. Many of them started in hotels. Many of them started serving, because all of it is linked and allows you to grow. And so between that and the internship program that we have, we're really spending time and money on developing people so that when they get in front of you, developing a diverse group of people. So when you get in front of you, not only do you have a diverse individual who can tap into different cultures for different reasons, but they're also well prepared. Because that's the most important thing, is prepared talent becomes great talent becomes vomiting profits, right?
I would say one thing that's important is to help people see hospitality as an actual legitimate career.
Yeah.
You know, I started out as a cook and, you know, have partnered in my own shop now, right? And it takes time for that to develop. And we have to help people. I don't know if Rosanna's still in the room, you know, the AHLA, but, you know, a great example is, you know, we have a learning management system. So if we hire the right people that have the behavioral attributes, have the cognitive capabilities through the hiring process, and we can plug them into some of these development programs, we'll do really well. So examples are, you know, using the culinary apprenticeship program to help people learn to be more, you know, of a cook, not just a burger flipper, but actually able to make sauce and create on their own. Make you know, more complex meals. Bartenders, you know, running them through the Bar Smarts program so they can do more than just a Jack and a Coke and pour a, you know, a beer and a wine. It's running people through the hotel manager development program. That kind of stuff has really paid off for us. And then it's important that, you know, we think as a company that you want people who are incoming employees to be able to see, does the leadership team look like me, right? You know, can I make it in this organization? Right. I'll admit we've done really well in, for example, we have a lot of black general managers, and that we're really proud of where that is. But we've had a hard time translating that up into the corporate leadership role. Right. Where we have been more successful is women. Now we've found we're over 70% of our corporate team is now women. And guess what? Hospitality is mostly women when you look at the industry. That's very well represented, but they haven't historically been represented well in the leadership roles. So I think if you do all those things right, you help career development, learning, ongoing, elevate folks right through your organization, you'll be successful.
If your team members do not reflect the community, you're in trouble. Yeah. So you need to make it active. You need to think about where you're recruiting. Because people have a tendency to recruit themselves, so you need to make sure that you have, you know, recruiters and interviewers from different walks of life. Yep. Because there is that inherent bias. So you need to fish in different and new ponds. You need to make sure you have a good process where you are bringing in the best talent that reflects your community and reflects your guests, and then you need to develop that talent and lean into that. One of the ways that we did that was by creating these employee resource groups that we started a couple years ago, and that you know, ours, the Spectrum group, that's really focused on empowering and developing our African American team members, you know, with providing through mentorship, through development. You have to lean in and make it conscious. And it was that employee resource group that actually gave birth to our BOLD program, Black Owners and Lodging Developers, where they saw an opportunity. They said, hey, why are less than 2% of hotels in America black owned? Why are less than 1% of hotels in America owned by black women? That's not acceptable. Correct. What can we do about it? And so these were our Spectrum team members who said, well, what do we do well at Wyndham? We're pretty good at helping people, you know, open and sustain successful hotels. So we held a focus group because we knew that we knew little and we needed to learn. And so we just went on a listening tour, had a focus group of established and first-time hoteliers, and said, what challenges? And of course, what did we hear? Access to capital. Access to deals. Deals were in an old boys club, a lot of people who look like me, and they were not getting to the right people. And there was that lack of access to expertise. what we heard was that maybe unlike, the Asian American community, maybe black entrepreneurs didn't necessarily grow up in the hotel business. So there was a need to help build those networks, give access to those experts, and so we built this program bespoke just to foster black hotel ownership, just like our Women on the Room program. And I'm never going to be happy with results, because that's just who I am. But in just a couple short years, 120 deals signed, 45 successful hotels open, starting to create generational wealth. But we just got to keep doing. And I know that our competitors, everyone's got a program like that. We all just need to lean in. That's why we're here.
Absolutely. Warren, do you have anything?
Thank you. I think that, look, you can, be good by doing good. And you can, as an example, I think last year in 24, we had over 800 internal promotions within our organization. We've changed some of the requirements for executive level positions at hotels, where we used to think you had to have a college degree. If you have relevant work experience, you can still do it. We had people who just weren't applying for positions, women, African Americans, Latinos. I don't have a college degree, so they wouldn't apply to become a director of sales. They wouldn't apply to become the director of food and beverage. They just wouldn't. They wouldn't do it for that very reason. And I think some of it has to do with you have to go back within your organization, look at the numbers, look at why things aren't happening the way you want them to happen, and challenge yourselves and just make sure that you change behavior. When you change behavior, you sort of sometimes get your desired results. Other things that we do for associates, I think our turnover rate is lower than any of our direct competitors. And the reason I know that is we participate in this survey. And there's roughly 10 or 15 of us. And I think some of it has to do with, number one, the way we empower people. Number two, we give people opportunities to fail. We also give people really good benefits, the ability to have education if they want it, the whole host of things. But the bottom line is, if we are driving our associates to excel, they'll want to stay with us. We provide them opportunities for growth so they can actualize what they want to do in the business, in the framework of the company that we have. Then they do it. If somebody says to me, you know what, Warren, I want to go try this over here and do that, great, how can I help you? Would never get in the way if somebody thinks they want to better themselves and their family by doing something else. And oh, by the way, sometimes the grass isn't always greener and they want to come back. And if they're a really good associate, of course we're gonna bring them back, absolutely. I may not be able to have the same job, but we'll find something for them. So I think the employee issues about in our industry are why we can succeed. And if you're not focused on your associates, you're really not in the hospitality business.
Absolutely. Well, on that note, we are out of time for our discussion today, but I know these gentlemen will be around today, and please reach out to them with any questions that you have, and thank you all very much for joining us today.
Nice to meet you.
Same.
Yeah.
Same.
Yeah. How can I help you?
That was our executive forum, A View from the Top. Special thanks to our moderator, Esther Hertzfeld, as well as our panelists, Charles Oswald, Warren Fields, Paul Cash, and Ron Cole. That session was brought to you by Wyndham Hotel and Resorts. Our next session is Part B, a general session, Executive Development Forum. What is the market outlook? Our moderator will be Andrew Wharton, Managing Director of REH Capital Partners. Our panelist, Julian Smith, Chief Development Officer, the Americas from IHG Hotels and Resorts, John Koshavos, Vice President, Director of Development, Southeast, Hilton. Jim Turney, Senior Vice President of Development and Owner Relations from Hyatt Hotels and Resorts. And Matthew Hostetler, Chief Development Officer from Red Roof Financing. Please note that our corporate suites are open. We have Choice Hotels in Orchid A, Marriott International in Orchid B, Hilton in Orchid C, U.S. Virgin Islands in Orchid D, the Bahamas in Gardenia B. Thank you once again to our sponsors. And as we prepare for our next session, if you have questions, you can contact our speakers and other attendees by using the mobile app. As well, our session descriptions are there. Connect, network, and scan the QR code in order to be able to get into the app if you have not activated it. Presentation slides, which were shared this morning, will also be in the app. This session runs from 10:45 to 11:35.
I have this, and I just want to say.
I didn't want to pull muscle.
The dual brand?
I don't want to run too fast.
We do.
Good morning, everyone. Can everyone hear me? Do I need? Perfect. Thank you. Good morning, everyone. Welcome to the Executive Development Forum. What is the market outlook? We've got a great panel of industry leaders in the development space here that are joining me today. My name's Andrew Wharton. I'm going to serve as your moderator. The focus of this session is really going to be talking about what the current opportunities are in the development space, how these folks are looking at how they're going to grow their pipelines, and where they see opportunities and potentially new opportunities out in the market that you all can capitalize on. We're going to start with some introductions. As I said, my name's Andrew Wharton. I'm a managing director with REH Capital Partners based here in Miami. We're a strategic advisory firm and boutique investment bank focused on the ownership side, primarily at the luxury and ultra-luxury level, helping owners accomplish their dreams, whether it's ground-up development or optimizing the returns from their existing assets.
Good morning, everybody. Thanks for being here. My name is Matt Hostetler. I am the Chief Development Officer at Red Roof. I'm happy to be with you today and this week. I am directly in charge of growing the units across the country for Red Roof in suites, plus our soft brand, the Red Collection, and our extended stay brand, Hometown Studio. So we're glad to be here with you today.
Great.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Jim Tierney. I lead the teams responsible for the growth of our Essentials and Classics brands on the eastern half of the U.S. When I mention Essentials, think of the brands you might recognize most: Hyatt Place, Hyatt House, Captioned by Hyatt, and then three of our newer ones, Hyatt Studios, Hyatt Select, and Unscripted. And then on the classic side, which are our traditional full-service brands, think of brands like Grand Hyatt, the Hyatt Regency here, Hyatt Centric, and then our Destinations brand. It's great to be here. Thank you.
Hey, I'm Julianne Smith, Chief Development Officer of the Americas for IHG for all of our brands. We've got about 6,200 hotels worldwide, and about 4,700 of those are in the Americas region. We're based in Atlanta, but we have offices all over the world.
Well, good morning, everyone. John Koshavos. I'm the Vice President and Managing Director of Development for Hilton Hotels, responsible for the growth of all of our brands in the southeastern and mid-Atlantic United States. Thrilled to be here. Looking forward to a very exciting conference.
Great. Well, as you can see, the panel is well-versed at all levels of the chain scale and all global destinations, but with a primary focus here in the Americas. As we've all seen reading in the mainstream media and then in the trade media, it's a difficult environment out there, but obviously deals are getting done. And it really, there's a lot of factors that come into where those deals are getting done, who the sponsors are, and how they're basically putting their capital stack together. So we're going to spend some time this morning talking about that. But before we dive into the discussion with the panelists, I just want to level set so that we're all starting from the same place. And so forgive me, but I'm going to read off some statistics that I haven't memorized. But it's interesting that In the quarter ending June 30th, 2025, that's been the 20th consecutive quarter where we've had a decline in hotel construction starts. And it's really been on a sustained decline since 2020, mid-2020. As of June of 2025, U.S. hotel construction starts have fallen for 6 straight months. So not only have we had 20 sustained quarters, but each of the last 6 months, those construction starts have declined. In the last quarter, the total rooms under construction have dropped to approximately 139,000 rooms, marking an 11.9% decline year over year. What's driving the drop? Everything we see in the paper every day. Economic uncertainty, high interest rates, rising construction costs, tariffs, and a softening somewhat in some of the segments of travel demand, which makes getting a deal very dependent on location, 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 and what the demand drivers are. Despite these factors, if we look at the planning pipeline, conversely to what's under construction from early stage planning through to late stage planning, that pipeline is very robust with approximately 350,000 rooms in those stages, and that's a 5% more than it was last year. But where we're seeing a lot of activity is brand conversion. So taking an existing asset, doing some improvements, renovations, repositioning, rebranding. And if we look at, for Q1 2025 alone, there were 136,000 rooms that were converted in 1,400 properties across the country, a 13% increase year over year. And when we combine that with renovations, that total jumps to almost 270,000 rooms in over 2,000 projects, which is a 16% rise year over year. If you start to look at what the pipelines are of the major brand families, conversions now account for almost 40% of new signings at the major brands. So they're looking, and we're going to get into talking about some of the major brand families diversifying their brand portfolio to cater for conversions. So let's get started. And John, just to kind of set the table for us, what do you see as the biggest challenges for growth in the broader hotel market today?
Well, in general terms, as you just outlined, the issue that we're facing, that all of us are facing, is new construction is difficult to do today. Getting the financing for new construction has been a challenge. There's been a lot of economic uncertainty, if you will, but we are starting to see stabilization in the markets where loans are becoming more readily available. So I think you're going to start seeing an increase in construction starts over the next, call it 6 to 18 months, which will help with some of the issue of the supply-demand scenario that we're currently faced with. The positive side is, as you mentioned, we're seeing a lot of conversion activity. Now that could be conversion from one brand to another within a company, or they could be picking up one of our hotels to convert to one of theirs, vice versa. But we're also seeing, because of the economic uncertainty right now, independent hotels are flocking a little bit more to trying to get into all of our collective brands from a collection standpoint or a hard brand standpoint. It's much more advantageous in uncertain economic times to be able to, if you will, pardon the pun, hitch your wagon to a brand that can drive that incremental business to your hotel. So that's why we're seeing the increase in conversion activity.
And John, you mentioned that financing is becoming more and more available. Are we going back to the days of the traditional lenders, or are we still seeing a lot of unconventional lenders compared to historical?
I think traditional lenders are dipping their toe back into the pool. What we're starting to see now is their books have been cleaned up a bit. They're looking for ways to grow their portfolios, diversify their loan portfolio, so we're starting to see that activity. The interest rate environment has stabilized, so now they're feeling much more confident that they can get back into our spaces with a little less risk.
Andrew, can I maybe just build on that? Yeah. Because, at Hyatt, we're seeing the same thing. I think people have become more comfortable with the uncertainty. I think traditional senior lenders, right, are dipping their toes back in the water. But I also think it's a game, right, that is heavily concentrated on local and or regional lenders. We were in Columbus last week, talked to multiple developers, right? They're securing rates in the 6.5 all in, right, which is remarkable. So I think the rates are out there. I think it goes back to the basic fundamentals of market, location, right, sponsorship, brand, all the things that we've learned about. The other thing that we're seeing is that people are getting more creative with how they put together their capital stacks, right? So we know, right, loan-to-cost leverage has come down. You have to bridge, right, whatever that level is into your equity level, and we're seeing people do it with mezzanine loans, preferred equity, where CPACE, right, is front and center. EB5 is back on, right? SBAs, right? Agricultural loans. So I think the environment has also forced people to get a little bit more creative about how we structure and get deals financed.
And I guess the takeaway from both your comments, I think, is if there's a will, there's a way. And it's really figuring out the Rubik's Cube of a particular project and figuring out what the capital stack needs to be, what the sponsorship needs to be, and what the brand, which is going to be essential. So Julianne, just taking the converse point of view, where do you see the biggest opportunities in the broader hotel industry market right now?
Yeah, I'll start with building on the comments that were already made relative to conversions. About 50% of our pipeline at IHG year to date are conversions. Last year in the Americas, last year we ended at about 40%. The year before it was like 35% using round numbers. So that continues to increase, and part of that is the lending community wants to see a cash flowing asset. They can then sort of over-under on what the renovation and rebranding could produce within the hotel, but they, in general, feel much more comfortable doing that than a speculative project that's going to open in 2 or 3 years based on the construction timeline. So that's another reason why conversions are more prolific today. What we're seeing in our breadth of hotels are the conversion brands like Voco, as an example, which is our upscale conversion brand, soft brand. And then the bookends. So Garner, which is a mid-scale conversion brand. Hilton has Spark. You all have Hyatt Select that they just launched. And we have, on the other side, which is also very busy, the resorts development. So Kimpton, we have a number of resorts opening, Scottsdale, Kauai as an example, which really helps us build out that reason for staying with us among our loyalty consumer, because we have those great hotels for people to vacation in after they are the road warrior at an Express or a Hotel Indigo. So we really see this bookend opportunity. Now, the investment thesis, the profile of the owner, where they get their capital from is extremely different, but that's pretty much where we're busiest today.
And so with the conversions, just going back to that, are you seeing most of the conversions within the portfolio going from one IHG brand to another? Is that the bulk of what you're seeing, or?
We thought we would see more of that actually when we launched Garner, because yes, we want to add rooms, right? And we want to add hotels that are accretive to our portfolio, but we also want to give Express an opportunity to not go out of our system because they're in a market that maybe the PIP doesn't make sense for it to stay Express. The market's evolved for Express to be, more appropriate at a different location, but it's only a small percentage. We're still seeing inbound opportunities, but are glad that we have that as a solve. We do have a couple of conversion examples that I think are great stories. This is year-old information, but we have about a 600-room what was a Holiday Inn in River North in Chicago, and we converted that to a dual brand Holiday Inn Voco. And you're able to kind of get that weekend wedding business with the Voco brand that we weren't able to get with Holiday Inn, and more of the Salesforce types meetings, because Salesforce is based there. So that's a great solution to have now with the 20 brands we have those solutions.
Excellent. So Jim, where do you see the current growth coming from, and what deals do you see getting done, and what are the factors that you see that differentiate those deals that are getting done versus those that aren't?
Yeah, I guess for us at a high level, right, our growth has come really organically and inorganically. And what I mean by inorganically is through acquisitions. So we've really solidified our foothold and our growth in the lifestyle and the all-inclusive space. Right? So if you think about our acquisition of Two Roads, we think about the acquisition of Dream Hotel Group, Apple Leisure Group, right? And now most recently Playa. So that's kind of on the inorganic side, right? So we acquire brands, we bring them into the system, we grow that way. But there's also an organic part to that, Andrew, and that's, right, growing the brands that we currently have and or introducing new ones. So we made a big entry into mid-scale with Hyatt Studios first, which is our upper mid-scale extended stay brand, and then most recently with Hyatt Select, which is our upper mid-scale transient, primarily conversion brand. And we continue to see growth there. We just talked about how hard it is to do new construction. Extended stay, I think, is probably one of the anomalies, right? Those deals seem to be getting done. But for us, the introduction of something in that upper mid-scale space that allowed for a conversion primarily outside in, as Julianne just touched on, would allow us to growth. John touched on soft brands, right? So I think that's another avenue for growth. And then we see it on kind of the more upper up luxury lifestyle side. So for us, extended stay, new construction, conversions, soft brands, and then I think that lifestyle space for us.
Excellent. So Matthew, like, does the current growth environment favor any particular geography, location, or any property type that you're seeing that makes it easier to actually start a project, either from ground up or to do a conversion?
Well, I don't know if anything's easier these days. But I would just take a look at, obviously there's major market growth out there, Phoenix, Dallas, Miami. Those opportunities are going to be out there, but they're high barrier to entry markets. So, when you're an investor, developer, hotelier, and you're taking a look at opportunities, there are a lot of opportunities out there. You just have to take the right time. Invest the time, because your time is very important if you're going to invest the money, to the right market, geographically, to maybe where you're based. But there's single hotels versus multi-use. You talk a little bit about that. We're not much of a multi-use type hotel organization, so we're single store or single location markets, and call it 3 or 4 different segments: economy, upper economy, and mid-scale with our soft brands. So we really just take a look at where the growth is. In our particular company, I heard Paul earlier say cash flow. I mean, it's very important for our franchisees to see cash flow, and in the economy level space, there's a lot of opportunity out there with repositioning. I call them the Goliaths that are next to me. They have opportunities in some. They're big companies.
Yeah, we call them that, Matt.
Yeah. You call them.
Sure we do.
So, but I just look at it and say, you talk about a conversion market. The conversions are a little slower than most people think, because I've been tracking it since I've joined this organization, specifically in our space since 2014. So the conversion opportunities are there, but I think there's a lot of people out there taking a look. There's activity, but they're waiting to see what's going to happen in the economy and all the various things that are happening since January. So there are fantastic opportunities. Growth in universities, primarily the black universities across the country. We're working with several different developers and markets, extended stay specifically, because there's a desperate need for housing, not only at universities, but near hospitals and that sort of thing. So depending on whether you're looking at geographically or market specific with demand generators, I think there's still a lot of opportunity out there. And I'll never lose this term in my life. In some markets, they're not overbuilt, they're under destroyed. So it's very important to take a look at those markets and see if there's opportunities.
Great.
You guys have anything to add to that?
No, that's pretty good.
So you can add. It wasn't
No, I do actually.
Yeah, go ahead, nobody. Go ahead.
You first.
Yeah, there's a lot that you bring to the table. They want to hear it.
I think if you look at it as maybe new construction versus conversions, I think there might be some patterns, right? We've heard an awful lot about the Smile States, right? So for us, if we think about new construction, think about the Smile States: Southern California through Arizona, Texas Panhandle, Florida, and up through the Carolinas. Right? We talked an awful lot about how hard it is to get something new construction done. So the markets where, right, the performance can support the project is where you get the new construction ones done. But to Matt's point, if you think about conversions, right, they can get done anywhere. Right? You might be, at a window in your current franchise agreement. You're staring, right, at a large renovation, right, PIP. You might start to think about, okay, well, I might have a bunch of other hotels in the same system in my market. I might want to think about, right, another branding option, right? And so long story short, I think new construction has some patterns. I think conversions, right, are kind of en masse.
And I think on the new construction side, let me just add, is Jim touched on it earlier, the sort of tried and true brands are getting financed with the owners who the lender has a relationship with. I heard a lender say, I think it was either at Alice or Hunter earlier this year, yes, we're putting out loans. If we don't have a relationship with you, please don't call me, right? So that's been difficult for those who are trying to break into the business. But for our suite of brands, Staybridge, Holland Express, Candlewood, those are getting financed because there's such a long history of performance. It's a little bit harder for our newer brands because you don't have that long history. Yes, you have the umbrella company that gives a surety, but that specific brand might not have the 20, 30 years of great performance like some of our other brands do.
That's exactly where I was going to go. When you think about some of the new brands that have been launched by all of these various companies that are presenting to you over the last few days, keep in mind, it takes a long time to seed these new brands in markets. So there are opportunities. As Jim mentioned, you talk about the smile states for new development, but there are phenomenal new development opportunities in what I consider to still be strong, robust markets in the Northeast, the Midwest. Don't forget about that stuff. What you read in the press, yes, some of it's true, companies moving here or there. The bottom line is you can find that sweet spot in a market for one of the brands that are represented by all of the companies here if you do your homework and do the due diligence. When you look at our pipeline, when you look at what we do, we've opened up, we now have 500 open and operating hotels in Florida. We still have a pipeline of a couple of hundred hotels for Florida. We don't know if they're all going to get built. We hope they do. But when you look at New York, we probably have a pipeline of 100 hotels in New York, not just Manhattan and the boroughs. You think about the whole state. Don't forget about those other states. There are opportunities in those as well, whether it be conversion or new construction. Go where the business is.
And I think where those demand generators are underserved and you've got a particular niche and your project can meet those demand generators and it's going to be a built-in market. I think just building on what you guys said, it's to say to the lender, here's X or Y that's really not being served by the existing properties. We think we can capture it and this brand is perfect for it. So John, just building on that, how do new and existing opportunities differ amongst the chain scale? And are there any places in the chain scale, that are easier to pencil and do new construction now than others?
Well, it's a great question, and it's not an easy one to answer, but I will tell you, like with our Live Smart Studio brand, premium extended stay, kind of premium economy extended stay, apartment style hotel. We opened up our first one in Tullahoma, Tennessee, a couple of weeks ago. We've got a robust pipeline on those. Easier to finance that type of project once we are able to demonstrate to the lenders that the model works. So as the first few get open, we're going to be able to tell a much better story to the lending community as to how that brand can work. I think when you think about mid-scale or upper mid-scale or economy, you've got a better shot at getting those financed today than you do a full-service or luxury hotel. If you're going to do a luxury hotel, Waldorf, Ritz, Four Seasons, pick your brand, doesn't matter, Thompson's, across the board, you're going to have to find a methodology to help support that operational and development cost of that hotel, maybe by doing branded residences with it or a condo development along with it to help support, get that project off the ground. Those are much harder to do than any of the product types in the mid-scale or economy segment for financing.
And I'll add to that because we're not seeing a single luxury hotel project that's new construction without that branded residential to get that capital infusion earlier. Conversion's not really an issue, but the new construction for sure.
And I think we're seeing that on a global basis, really, because of the cost per key, needing those branded residential sales to offset the basis of the hotel and all the amenities to spread it across a much greater number of keys, as I drop the water bottle. But I mean, that's really every single brand when they come to the table with a luxury hotel developer or owner sitting down and saying, how do you plan to sell these luxury residences and what's the velocity going to be so that we understand when the payback's going to be. So Matthew, we just talked about extended stay really being such a standout segment because of its resilience. And what can extended stay properties in different chain scales learn from one another about optimizing the development costs and focusing on what guests want now?
Well, I think everybody up here would agree that we all look at what the consumer is asking for, which is most important, then we can learn from there. I think obviously from a development and construction perspective, each and every one of the brands take a very good look at how to save development costs in order to give that developer owner a very good ROI on that space in which is in the box, if you will. So, you know, I'd like to say that when we launched our Hometown Studios brand in 2018 going into 19, we all know what happened a year later. So we had signed, you know, a bunch of deals, and then all of a sudden the pandemic hit. So what are we doing? We're sitting in our home offices, retooling and working with current franchisees to reimagine, if you will, and reduce costs, because we saw everything skyrocket when it came to lumber, all raw materials, right? We've talked about this for 5 years. So it was very important for us to, in this case, cut corners. Cut corners in construction is actually pretty good because corners cost money. So that's one of the few things that we took a look at with our prototype to reduce some costs. Some of the things that we had for backups, you know, we had, you know, and you can still do it in some hurricane locations, generators. You know, we just removed some of those things, and just making sure that the comfortability, the essential needs that the upper economy traveler, and there are essential workers across the United States in our space that are traveling to our hotels, making sure that they have what they need in those boxes and not overcomplicate it. Then you take a look at what is building upon this. Obviously, extended stay has been around longer than most people think. It's just been put in front of you in the last 5 years because of the pandemic. But importantly, the companies are starting to take a look at what's available and what we're doing and the extended stay needs for top executives in luxury style living. And that's what you're seeing a lot of the new brands come out into the marketplace. And I think everyone has a need, everyone has a want, and I think it's fantastic. So you're starting to see all these various different extended stay tiers continue to grow, build, and I think there's a lot of opportunity for multiple reasons, specifically involving around an economy and mid-scale probably most is labor. You know, we're talking about labor all the time. We've been talking about labor since I've been in the hotel business, the cost of labor and the diminishing opportunities for of people wanting to be in hospitality. So that's another session to talk about bringing people into the industry because it's a fantastic one. So I think that we do learn a lot from each other. We see what we do, and frankly, imitation is the best form of flattery. And there's a lot of great people out there in this industry that have led for a long time to build products that are great.
Right. So Jim, you know, Hyatt's had a long history, 70 plus years, you know, primarily focused at the beginning on luxury and upper upscale. 20 years ago almost, they decided to basically diversify and get into the upscale select service with Hyatt Place and Hyatt House. And just recently, you decided to enter into the mid-scale segment. Can you just share with the audience what drove that decision from Hyatt's perspective, from building the pipeline and those items, and then just talk a little bit about what the opportunities are for developers to get in on this early stage of these new brands?
Yeah, I think as you pointed out, right, the company was founded in 1957, and for 50 years, right, we were a full-service company, right, both globally and here domestically. It wasn't until 2005 when the company bought the AmeriSuites brand and converted 120 of those to Hyatt Place, and then we bought the Summerfield Suites brand, converted those, acquired another company, and kind of relaunched Hyatt House. That was our first really foray into something below full service. And the intention, right, the strategy, was to try to be in more locations, right, where our guests wanted us to be, but where we didn't have a product. You weren't going to put a Hyatt Regency like this in a tertiary or secondary market, right? It just doesn't work. So that's what led us to launch Hyatt Place and Hyatt House, and then more recently, launch Hyatt Studios and Hyatt Select. So we start off with full service, we come down to select service with Hyatt Place and Hyatt House, but if you followed the numbers, right, over the years, more than 50% of development was in that mid-scale to upper mid-scale space. We just didn't have a seat at the table. We didn't have a brand. And so for us, it was about, right, in an intentional and thoughtful way, increasing our presence so that you would experience here in an urban location, but maybe when you're with the family or you're out on your job, you would be able to experience us with a brand that fit that market. Right? We all know that, right? You earn in the cities and you burn at the beaches, right? So we were really good at the beaches. We just wanted to provide more locations where people, right, could earn their points and then burn them. So for us, the entry into upscale and then upper mid-scale introduced us to a whole new population of owners, but it was also a fantastic on-road for New World of Hyatt members, right, who could experience us from upper mid-scale all the way up to luxury.
That's a great background and a great understanding of how you decided to move into the business. And what do you see, just as a follow-up, what the opportunities are for owners and developers by working with one of the brand families, Hyatt or somebody else, on those new mid-scale?
Well, we don't have 500 hotels in Florida. Sorry, John. Said differently.
Gotta throw the shots.
We have a lot of opportunity for our new brands and for our existing brands. I think John and Julianne and Matt touched on it. What we see is a retreat to a more affordable price point. Right. So people come down from upscale to mid-scale and upper mid-scale and even economy, right? To build these things because the total project cost is lower, your equity requirement is lower, you can get a shovel in the ground faster, get open faster, and the operating model is...
Just to add to Jim's point, and Matt mentioned it, Julianne mentioned it, we all talked about it. The travel intent has changed over the years. We keep forgetting that. When I'm on the road, I don't need to stay in a Hyatt, a Hilton, a Holiday Inn. Give me a Hampton, give me a Hyatt Place, whatever, an Express. I'm in and out. I'm on the road. I'm doing my work. And then I'm going to go in, I'm going to grab a coffee in the morning, and then I'm out. I don't need the full-service hotel for some of those business occasions. When I'm at conferences, et cetera, yes, you need the meeting space, you need et cetera. Everybody in here has a different travel intent for each trip. The goal for all of us, if you would look at it as a supermarket shelf, right? You've got your high-end product up top all the way down to your economy stuff. You want the consumer to be able to pick what they want off the shelf. That's what each of our companies are attempting to do with different brands.
Yeah, keep them in-house.
Keep them in-house. Don't let them shop at another supermarket for what you don't have.
Yeah. And for the developers too, really, right? And the same applies to the developer saying, hey, I've got this location. It's maybe not suited for a full-service property because the demand generators aren't there. I can do a mid-scale select service or extended stay. I'm going to build it and they will come, but the market isn't robust enough to really build that here. I want to do something in my hometown or somewhere I love, and it makes sense, just like the consumer side, and we're seeing that more and more.
Andrew, I think, right, it's really incumbent on us and our teams as development folks to guide you to the right brand fit for the right opportunity.
Yeah.
Right, as I have to tell people that
because we might not have something that fits for what your need is, but everybody else here might or might not, and that is the key. We're just not going to do a deal for the sake of doing a deal, because if you're not making money at it, you're not going to do another one with us.
Right. We have two customers, franchisee and the consumer.
Yeah,
franchisee is most important to start.
We also touched a little bit about, like differentiation, right? A lot of us have a product, maybe an economy, and a product in mid-scale, or we've got one in mid-scale, we've got an upscale, right? It's also our responsibility to ensure that, right, the brands are differentiated, right? The consumer is just swamped with all these brand choices. We have to be clear about brand differentiation.
Got to be more clear about that.
So shifting gears a little bit, Julianne, how do you see the growth in your company over the next 5 years being split between management agreements, franchise agreements, and then ownership / sliver equity where IHG is investing in the projects?
Sure. I think all the companies represented here are a little bit different. The way that we grow is primarily through franchise agreements. Now, depending upon where the project is, what brand it is, we might provide some financial incentives. Like, the Regent Santa Monica did not come to us without financial incentives, and that one we happen to manage. So we do have Our upper luxury hotels are all managed agreements. We don't have a franchise program for those. That's Regent, Six Senses, and now our branded residential program. But all the other brands we will franchise. Now, on the upper upscale to lifestyle side, it's about 60% franchise agreements, probably about 40% management agreements in the Americas region. And then everything below that in the premium suites and essential space is pretty much franchising. Now, when I look at the 4,700 hotels or so that we have in this region, there's about 35 of those, only 35, that have some sort of IHG investment. So we will do that from time to time, but we really operate as a fees-generating type of company. We're not a real estate holder like some of my peers here are. With that said, we do preserve capital to buy brands, right? So we just bought the Ruby brand, which brings about 30 hotels in the micro lifestyle space to us. They're based in Munich. They've got all of their locations in Europe today, but that's a great offering for us to have for our consumers in urban markets here in this region as well, and those will be franchise agreements primarily.
And where do you see, just to build on that, where do you see that brand going in terms of?
High barrier to entry primary markets. I think that smaller room, and we're still working on the offering here for our debut in the US, it just can't be as small as the rooms in Europe. The American customer in aggregate is not super comfortable in a very small room. So it'll be a little bit bigger probably, but still micro for all intents and purposes. And that's usually translated and accepted in primary markets. Probably not secondary. I know some of our competitors have had some success over time getting into the secondary markets, but I think launching in those primary markets, getting people familiar with what the brand is. It's actually a really great F&B offering, and the creator of the brand, who was the genius behind it about 20 years ago, he said he always looked for locations where a bar would work first, and then thought if a hotel would work there. So it's just a different way of approaching development. So all of the locations have walkability. Train transportation is important in Europe, not as important here. Some markets it is. But thinking about where the F&B will work, which is also part of Kimpton's strategy, by the way, is pretty important for that brand.
And then understanding the smaller footprint of the rooms, I would assume that the prototypical development cost then, even compared to some of your other mid-scale brands, might be even lower.
I think from an all-in standpoint, from a per key basis as well, but we're really focusing on the F&B, and because you're in that higher barrier entry market, it's not going to be inexpensive to do these deals. We're also looking at office conversions, like the rest of everybody else is too, as the office market softens in primary markets. So that would be an interesting conversion opportunity with that smaller room.
Absolutely. So John, maybe we can shift gears and you could talk a little bit about how Hilton kind of determines how they're going to come up with their growth strategy for the pipeline. And then as a follow-up to that, how individual developers can see what brands and how they fit into that growth with whatever brand family they're talking to.
So if you go back a few years, and I'm going back a lot of years, Hilton as a company was a very asset-heavy company back in the day. We owned a lot of real estate, and we bought a lot of real estate. In 2000, we bought Promise Hotels that had brands like Embassy Suites, Homewood Suites, Hampton Inn, DoubleTree, Red Lion. There were a couple of others in there. From that point forward, Hilton did not purchase another hotel brand up until about 18 months ago when we bought Graduate Hotels and Nomad Hotels. So two segments that we had not played in. To kind of fast forward, we became an asset-light model after we spun off the real estate. But to the strategy point that you're making, when we looked at our portfolio, we kind of digested where we thought there was white space. In our opinion, it was an extended stay with the launch of Home2 Suites, mid-scale extended stay product that did phenomenally well. We had Homewood Suites playing in the upscale segment of extended stay, and we felt that the price point on that was getting pretty expensive. We needed to continue to attract the consumer that was looking for something that was going to cost them a little less. As years go by, that kind of elevated, right? The average rate, I think, on that brand now sits at $157, hence the launch of Live Smart Studios. to go something below that at a cheaper price point, cheaper to build, et cetera. So to answer the question in a roundabout fashion, we put a big white paper up on the board and we kind of say, we need something over here. We need a collection brand here because we don't have something that fits. And that was our strategy, to put it in the kind of incubator, if you will, and figure out if we could design something that would have longevity, because this is about longevity. You don't want to launch a brand and then 5 years down the road go, oh boy, we kind of blew it on that one. That didn't make sense. Now what do you do? So there's a lot of research that goes into what we look at. As an example, when you think about the Live Smart studios, it's a big debate internally. Do we do a swimming pool? Do people need a swimming pool in these long-term extended stay hotels? No, they're not. They're looking at it as an apartment. They're looking at it as, and I go back when I started my career. Graduate college, get shipped off to Columbus, Ohio by Hyatt Hotels to be in their corporate training program. I don't know Columbus. I got 2 weeks to live in the hotel there, and then it's like, go get your apartment. Think about that kind of a thing when you're starting your career. You graduate, you're moving to a new city, you don't know where to live. Nowadays, you don't have to sign a lease. You don't need that apartment for a year. You can go stay in any one of the products that are offered by these companies for a month, 2 months, 3 months, until you learn where you want to be. So to go back to it, it all comes down to finding that white space in your offering that you don't currently have, and try to tailor a brand to keep the swim lanes separate from each particular brand that you're offering.
Excellent. We've got a little over 7 minutes left, so we're going to jump forward in some of the questions because the discussion's been great. I'd like, starting with Jim and then going to Julianne and then coming to John and then back to Matthew. For the folks in the audience, what's your best advice for a first-time hotel owner, developer, somebody that's getting into the business and thinking about developing a new hotel?
Great question. I think step one is call me first before you call John, Julianne, or Matt. On a serious note, surround yourself, right? Put together a team of people who have done this before, right? You may say, I do residential, I do self-storage, I do industrial, I get it. There are some commonalities, but there are also some striking differences. Put together your team early, right? Get everyone on board, and that starts with feasibility, right? John with HVS is here. You want to get a management company, right? At least until you learn how to run this thing. You want to talk to a builder? Definitely want to be talking to your lender. So long story short, build out that team, right? Move forward together.
Great.
Yeah, I really don't have anything different to say, because it starts with your advisors and consultants to really make sure you're making the right decision. Each of us here will give you free advice and we'll skew you towards our brands, but we'll give you free advice because we'd like you to choose one of our brands. And then there are advisors who could partner with you, or you could pay to give you absolutely unadulterated black and white. This is what is the white space in this market, and then you can plug in from there. But having that base of business or partnerships is important. And then also, I always recommend, get your operating partner in early too, because they can help you determine whether or not, the meeting space is right enough. Maybe you need a bigger site because you want more meeting space because whatever's in that market. And your advisors can help you, but your management companies and your brands can help you, and you can get a lot of information from each of those individuals.
Great.
One point to add, all great points. Keep it within a 3-hour driving distance of your home base.
Absolutely.
If you're living in New York, do not try to develop a hotel in Dallas as your first one. It is too much time back and forth, and you're not going to know the intricacies of that market. Stay within a 3-hour radius. You're going to have a much better chance of success.
Yeah, for all intents and purposes, have you worked in a hotel? Do you understand the intricacies of a hotel? Do you understand the consumer needs? 24/7. It's 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. I mean, we feel that way, and we're in leadership at big companies. We're 53 years in the industry, 720 open and operating hotels. It's busy. Our owner-operators are busy and on call all day long. Everyone, you look at the economy space, we talk about the Asian Hotel Owners Association and their community. They're our biggest client. We're evolving into other folks as well. Take a look at the organization that you're thinking about joining and how they're going to support you. Are you going to be an owner-operator? Are you going to be on site? What's your experience level? Do you bring a management company like they've said in first and then learn from them and then take over? It's a tough way to go, but it depends on the size of the hotel and the revenue that you're going to produce, because that, I don't know what it's going for, 2.5% to 5% now for a management company to oversee your asset. That's a big chunk of your top line revenue that's not going to hit your bottom line. So it's a very interesting thing to make sure that you look at whenever you're doing your first hotel, and you have 4 minutes now. So.
Excellent. I think all great points. We've got just a couple minutes left. I wanted to just open it up to the audience for questions. We've got a great group of panelists. Yes, sir.
So I'll tackle that a little bit. It's been around for a long time. I think it's now really starting to get traction. We're doing several hotels, modular construction. There's a myth about it, though. It is not going to be all that much less expensive than a traditional build. However, the time to completion is significantly shorter. Time is money. You can get a hotel open much quicker if it's done the right way. So there is a financial savings. It just might not be so much on that front end.
I'll add to that. Totally agree with what John is saying. The other call out or risk here, because you'll have a great hotel, it'll be built well, is to make sure that the modular construction company you're working with is creditworthy, is solvent, because we have seen some developers left holding the bag because you have to pay for it before they'll produce the modular pieces for you, and then you're going to receive it later. And if something happens in between you paying for it and receiving it, you're out that money. So there's some risk there.
Yeah.
And I think, everybody got intrigued by the success they had in Europe, talking to cruise ship cabin manufacturers that are just slotting things into a large eco-structure. And Motel 1 was very successful in Europe, putting hotels up in record time in city center hotels. We just don't have that infrastructure in the US and North America. And if we were talking about putting those modules on a ship and shipping them from Finland or somewhere where that infrastructure is, the costs just go up exponentially because of transportation costs and the risk of damage in transit. So I think there's still a ways to go for somebody in the US to make the investment and see that there'll be enough traction to develop that infrastructure.
Yeah, quite honestly, one other issue about it, certain prototypes that we all have may not work with modular because the room bays may be too wide and cannot be shipped on our roads. And people forget about that. Now, standard guest room size bay, maybe up to, I think, 16 feet can work on the roads, but other than that, you're not going to be able to do it.
Yeah, and I think, the 300-mile radius to me sticks out as, transportation after that is a little cost prohibitive. Absolutely love modular, by the way. The other thing is it's going to require a little more education. If you think about your draws with the lender, they're going to come fast and the furious up front. So it's not a traditional draw. And then also on your inspections, are the local inspectors going to the manufacturing plant? Right? So just a couple of extra things to think about, but I love it.
Yeah, now you got to take a look at 300 miles or less from the plant.
That's right.
Not necessarily your home.
Yeah, correct.
Well, we're just about out of time. I'd like to thank the panel for sharing. Oh, one more question. Okay, we'll do one more quickly.
My name is Justin Sohi. I'm with the Sohi Group and investment sales specialist. My question is on the dual brand. How does the performance of dual branded hotels compare to single brand in terms of revenue, customer satisfaction, operational efficiency, and acquisitions?
We were happy to launch a new construction dual brand because we started testing it in conversion opportunities where, for one of the first ones, let's just say, was in Bordentown, New Jersey, 120 keys. The occupancy was not right where they wanted it to be. So they completely renovated to a full kitchenette-style living, and this hotel runs 90% occupancy. So they're not leaving any money on the table. They've got great base business that's there long. Not only base cost, meaning military base as well. So you get those extended stay visitors to the base. They're in and out. So they're, they start well. So they got that build base, and then their transient businesses, they continue to drive the rate.
So the beauty of them, right, is you can cast your net wider and appeal to a broader audience. You've got your transient folks who might be there for 1, 2, or 3 nights, and then you've got your long-term stays. So in our portfolio, they are top performers. Right? That said, right, from an ownership and an operations side, you have to make sure that, right, there are efficiencies. Right, you have to kind of combine a lot of stuff. You don't want 2 separate check-ins. You don't want 2 lobbies. Ideally, you don't want 2 breakfast areas, but sometimes that's something you can't.
Yeah. Bottom line, and operational efficiencies to the dual brand's the key.
Do you see challenges in marketing techniques for, your extended stay versus limited service?
I don't. I think the key to a successful dual brand for any of us is making sure that you're doing the right kind of a dual brand. I'm not going to do a Hilton with a Home 2 Suites. Makes no sense. You've got to, can you do Hampton and Homewood, Home 2 and True? Those types of combinations work where you can combine the back of the house areas, have one laundry area, if you will, one front desk. The breakfast offerings are not significantly different, so we would combine some facets of that to drive that operational efficiency. Some dual brands aren't going to work. You've got to make sure you pick the right 2 types of hotels to do.
Last question. What are your best performing dual brands?
All of them.
Perfect answer.
I think the key is making sure that the operator runs the transient side, transient. And if there's an extra room because the transient side's booked, you can put them over here, but run that extended stay piece the way it's meant to be ran.
I'll add, the smaller dual brands, like we have an Avid Candlewood dual brand. It works really well in the smaller markets because you're probably not going to build 2 individual 100-room hotels for a total of 200. You have maybe 120 total, and you're able to capture all of the business. So that efficiency is fantastic. So I would say in general, it's those smaller dual brands that really work well. But we have some bigger ones too.
That's a great point. I think as you come down the chain scale, right, in mid-scale, your total key count for a dual, could be in that 120 to 150.
Yeah.
However, as you go up, right, I think the way we all underwrite dual brands is, right, each brand has to stand on their own. Right, we wouldn't do likely a 150-room Hyatt Place and Hyatt House if the market could support 2 individual ones at theoretically 120.
Makes sense.
Right.
Yep.
Thank you so much.
Perfect. Well, I appreciate everyone's attention, and please join me in giving the panelists a round of applause. Thank you, everybody.
Well done, crew.
Go to picture.
Thank you. That was the Executive Development Forum, What is the Market Outlook? Special thanks to our moderator, Andrew Wharton, Managing Director of REH Capital Partners, Julian Smith, Chief Development Officer, The Americans, IHG Hotels and Resorts, John Koshavos, Vice President and Managing Director of Development, Southeast, Hilton, Jim Tierney, Senior Vice President of Development and Owner Relations, Hyatt Hotels and Resorts, and Matthew Hostetler, Chief Development Officer of Red Roof Franchising. We'll now have a PepsiCo networking break for 10 minutes, sponsored by PepsiCo and Choice Hotels International. Please return to the room for 11:45 for our main stage NABHOOD Distinguished Speaker Series. It is our 7th annual Thomas J. Baltimore Distinguished Speaker Series and NABHOOD Endowed Session with Steve Joyce and Dr. Andy Ingram. See you in 10 minutes at 11:35. At 11:45.